My wife cheated on me with her boss, then secretly transferred $250, $0 of our savings into her sister's account before filing for divorce. Now she's claiming I have no right to our property, and I just found out she's been buying up real estate in my name behind my back. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how I found out my wife was cheating on me with her boss, and then secretly draining our savings to buy up property in my name behind my back. It's like a bad movie, except I'm living it. And honestly, it's hard to believe how fast everything unraveled. I'll start from the beginning because honestly I thought I knew everything about my life until I didn't. My wife, Emily, and I have been together for over 10 years. We met in college, hit it off right away, and got married a few years after. She's always been a bit of a drama queen, bitchy, stubborn, and quick to lie when it suited her. But she's also charming when she wants to be, and I guess I was blinded by that charm. We had a decent life, comfortable enough with a nice house, good jobs, and enough savings to do pretty much whatever we wanted. Or so I thought. Things started changing about 6 months ago. She became more secretive, hiding her phone, brushing off my questions, and leaving her laptop open when she thought I wasn't looking. At first, I just thought she was busy with work or maybe stressed out. She's a marketing exec, always chasing some new deal or client. But then I noticed the little things. Her phone ringing at odd hours, her quick texts she'd hide behind her back, and her sudden interest in self-care. She'd go out with her friends more often, always claiming it was just girls' nights, but I could tell something was off. One night I decided to check her phone. I know, that's not exactly the moral high ground, but I was desperate. I didn't trust her anymore. I found messages, flirty, suggestive texts with her boss, Mark, it. Blatant. She was calling him babe, saying she missed him, and even talking about meeting up for a little fun. My stomach dropped. I thought maybe I was imagining things, but the messages didn't lie. This was real. I confronted her the next morning. I showed her the messages and she just laughed, said I was paranoid, that it was all innocent, just work banter blown out of proportion. She told me I was overreacting, that Mark was just a friend, that I was insecure. But I knew better. I could see the guilt in her eyes, the way her voice cracked when she lied. It was obvious she'd been lying to me for months. But then things got worse. That same week, I noticed our bank account was unusually low, and when I checked the transaction history, I saw that she had transferred $250, $0 into her sister's account, claiming it was a loan for some business venture. But I knew that wasn't true. I'd never approved that amount, and it didn't make sense for her to suddenly need that much money. I started digging deeper, and that's when I found out she'd been buying up real estate property in my name, in her sister's name, in her boss's name, all behind my back. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. We had a decent savings account, and suddenly she's draining it for some secret investments. It's like I didn't even know who she was anymore. How can someone be so manipulative, so cold? I felt betrayed, angry, and just numb all at once. I didn't sleep for days after I uncovered everything. The house, the money, the lies, they all hit me at once. I kept thinking about how she'd been lying to my face, playing me for a fool. How she'd been screwing her boss while I was coming home, thinking everything was fine. It's like I was living with a stranger and I didn't even realize it until it was too late. I kept asking myself, how long has this been going on? Was I blind? Was I stupid for trusting her? I knew I had to confront her again, but I wasn't sure what I was going to say. Part of me wanted to explode, to scream and break everything. The other part just wanted her gone, out of my life, and to find some way to get back what was mine, my money, my peace of mind, my dignity. But I also knew I had to be smart about it. This wasn't just about her cheating. It was about the financial mess she'd left behind and the fact that she was planning to leave me with nothing. I had to think, plan, and decide what my next move was. I'll leave it here for now. If you want me to keep going, just ask. The shock was just the beginning. After I found out about her affair and the money she'd stolen, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. Every time I looked at her, I saw this bitchy, manipulative woman who'd been lying to my face for months. It was hard to believe I'd been so blind, so naive. I mean, we had our problems, sure, but I never thought she'd go this far. I guess I always believed she loved me, or at least cared enough not to totally destroy what we had. Turns out, she was just hiding her true self all along. The night I confronted her with the evidence, her reaction was infuriating. She sat there smirking and told me I was overreacting. Said the messages with Mark were just harmless flirting, that I was insecure and jealous. She threw in some classic lines: "You're paranoid, you don't trust me, and it's just sex, it doesn't mean anything." But I knew better. I knew she was lying. I could see it in her eyes. She was lying through her teeth. She tried to spin it to make me feel guilty for catching her. She said she was under stress, that her boss had been pushing her and that she was just venting. Yeah, right, like that makes it okay. And then she had the nerve to accuse me of not paying enough attention, of neglecting her, that she needed more excitement, more passion. It was all bullshit and I knew it. She wanted to justify her cheating to make me feel like I was the problem, but I wasn't falling for it. The worst part was when I discovered the money transfer. That $250, $0 wasn't just some petty theft. It was a calculated move to set herself up. Property in her sister's name, in her boss's name. How sick is that? She'd been secretly buying up real estate and I didn't even know. I found out she'd been doing this for months behind my back. I started digging through bank statements, property deeds, everything I could find. The more I looked, the more I realized she'd been planning this whole thing for a while. The emotional toll hit me hard. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. I kept asking myself, how could she do this? How could she lie for so long? I'd been working my ass off, saving every penny, thinking we were building a future together. Turns out she was secretly siphoning off our money, buying property, and planning her escape. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. And then came the anger, pure hot rage. I wanted to smash something to make her feel as small as she made me feel. But I knew that wouldn't fix anything. Instead, I started thinking about what I was going to do next. I couldn't just let her walk away with everything. I had to fight back somehow. I had to protect what was mine and make sure she didn't get away with this. I started gathering all the evidence I could: bank statements, property deeds, her texts, emails. I wanted to have everything in order before I did anything. I also reached out to a lawyer just to understand my rights. The lawyer told me that she was definitely trying to cheat me out of our shared assets and that I had grounds for a serious legal fight. That was a wake-up call. I'd been so caught up in the shock and anger that I hadn't even thought about how to legally protect myself. In the meantime, she kept up her lies, acting like everything was fine. She'd come home, pretend to be the loving wife, but I knew better. I could see her eyes darting around, her nervousness when I looked at her. She was trying to cover her tracks, but I knew her game. I felt like I'd been played for a fool, and the worst part was realizing how much I'd trusted her, trust that she'd shattered into a million pieces. That night, I sat alone in the dark, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of everything. The betrayal, the money, the lies. I was angry at her, but also angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. I kept thinking about the future, what it would look like now. Could I forgive her? Could I move on? Honestly, I didn't know. All I knew was that I had to do something. I couldn't let her ruin me financially or emotionally. So I made a decision. I would fight for my rights, for what's mine. I would expose her lies, take back control, and make her regret ever crossing me. I wasn't going to let her get away with this, not without a fight. And I wasn't going to let her ruin my life any further. Whatever it took, I was going to make sure she paid for her lies and her betrayal. If you want me to keep going, just ask. The next step was to get organized. I couldn't just confront her again without knowing exactly what I was up against. I needed a plan, a lawyer, and hard evidence. I spent the next few days digging through everything I could find: bank accounts, property records, emails, texts. I even hired a private investigator to verify what I'd uncovered. I needed confirmation that she was buying property in my name and in her sister. And I wanted to know exactly what she was up to behind my back. When I finally sat down with my lawyer, Lisa, it was like a huge weight lifted. She looked at all the documents I had, and her eyes widened. She told me that I had a strong case, especially since she'd transferred $250,000 without my consent. She said I could sue her for fraud, breach of trust, and even get a court order to freeze the assets she was hiding. It was a lot to process, but at least I had a legal plan now. Meanwhile, Emily was still acting like everything was fine. She'd come home, cook dinner, act like she cared, but I saw through her. Her smiles were fake, her eyes darted around, and I caught her in tiny lies. She'd say she was at work or out with friends, but I'd see her sneaking her phone into the bathroom or hiding her texts. She was obviously trying to cover her tracks, but she was terrible at it. Every time she left her phone unattended, I'd check it. I wasn't proud of that, but I was desperate to find out just how deep she'd gone. One night I found a new message thread with Mark. It was explicit, talking about meeting up for sex, and she was promising him she'd do whatever it takes. I felt like my stomach was in knots. I couldn't believe I'd been living with this woman, sharing my life, and she was screwing her boss behind my back. It was a punch to the gut. I'd never felt so betrayed in my life. I'd always thought she was just a little high maintenance, a little bitchy, but this was something else. I confronted her again, this time with more evidence. I laid everything out on the table: the texts, the bank statements, the property deeds. She finally broke down and admitted she'd been trying to get out for months. She said she never loved me anymore, that I was boring, and that Mark made her feel alive. Classic. She also tried to spin the story that I was just jealous and paranoid, but I wasn't buying it. I told her she'd crossed a line, that I wasn't going to let her walk away with our savings, our house, or the property she'd been secretly buying. That's when she started throwing more lies. She claimed she was saving the money for us, that she was planning to leave Mark and start fresh, that I was just too insecure to see her happiness. Yeah, right. She was totally full of shit. I knew she'd been planning this for a while, and her truth was just another lie to cover her ass. I could see her desperation, her attempt to guilt-trip me into backing down. But I wasn't that guy anymore. I'd been humiliated enough. The emotional roller coaster was brutal. I felt anger, sadness, and a deep sense of betrayal. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs. How did I not see she was planning to leave, to take everything? I've been so caught up in our routine, in pretending everything was okay, that I didn't see the cracks. Now I was paying the price. It was like waking up from a nightmare, only to realize the nightmare was real and I was still in it. I also started to think about what I wanted next. Part of me wanted to fight her in court, to get my money back, to make her pay for her lies, but another part just wanted to get out, to start over somewhere else, far from the chaos. I knew the legal battle would be long and ugly, but I was ready for it. I wasn't going to let her ruin me financially or emotionally. I was done being the naive husband who trusted blindly. From now on, I'd be cautious, smarter, and more careful about who I let into my life. I told her I was done with her manipulations. I told her I was going to expose everything and fight for what's mine. She looked surprised, maybe even scared for the first time. But I also knew she'd been planning her escape for months, and I had to act fast. I started preparing for a fight, not just legally but emotionally. I knew I'd need to rebuild after this, figure out who I was without her, and learn how to trust myself again. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I filed the paperwork, started talking to other lawyers, and began the process of reclaiming what was rightfully mine. I also cut ties with her completely. No more dinners, no more pretending. I moved out of the house temporarily, staying with a friend while I sorted everything out. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, seeing her try to act normal, pretending she cared. But I knew I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. I had to take control. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown through this mess. I learned that trust is fragile, and sometimes people hide who they really are until it's too late. I also learned that revenge isn't just about getting even. It's about standing up for yourself, protecting what's yours, and refusing to be a victim. I don't know how this story will end yet, but I do know I'm stronger than I thought, and I'll never let someone like her do this to me again. After I filed the paperwork and started the legal process, everything changed. It was like suddenly I was on the outside looking in at my own life, watching her scramble to cover her tracks. She tried to act normal, act like she still loved me, but I could see through her. She was panicked, her lies becoming more desperate. I knew she was trying to hide more than just the property and the money transfer. She was trying to erase her tracks altogether, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The first court hearing was a mess. She showed up looking like she just rolled out of bed trying to act innocent, but her eyes gave her away. She kept insisting she was innocent, that she was just trying to find herself, and that I was overreacting. Her lawyer was doing her no favors either, trying to spin her story, claiming she was just a victim of my paranoia, but I had all the evidence. Her texts, the bank statements, the property deeds. I knew I had the upper hand, but it didn't make it any easier to sit there and listen to her lie. The judge wasn't convinced by her sob story. She ordered a forensic audit of our bank accounts and property holdings. That was the moment I knew I was finally getting some justice. The audit confirmed everything I'd found. She transferred hundreds of thousands of dollars, bought multiple properties, and was trying to hide it all behind shell companies and fake names. It was a huge relief, but also angering, seeing the extent of her manipulation made me realize how deep she'd gone. Meanwhile, I kept my distance from her. I didn't want to give her any more opportunities to lie or manipulate me. I stayed focused on my legal case, gathering more evidence, and talking to financial experts to understand exactly what was hers and what was hers to take back. I also started to rebuild my confidence, talking to friends, leaning on my family, and trying to stay grounded. It's funny how, in moments like these, you realize who your real friends are. They were the ones telling me to fight, to stand my ground, and not let her cheat me out of what I worked so hard for. Her behavior got even more erratic. She'd send me angry texts, accusing me of trying to ruin her, and claiming I was jealous of her success. Success? She'd been lying and stealing behind my back for months. I didn't bother responding anymore. I knew she was just trying to provoke me, to get me to lose my temper, but I stayed calm. I knew I had the evidence and I knew I was right. That's all that mattered now. One of the most shocking revelations came when I found out she'd been secretly buying up properties in my name, properties I never even knew about. She used her sister's name in some cases, or fake companies registered in other states. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. All these years, I thought we were building a future together, but she'd been planning her escape the whole time. She was trying to leave me with nothing, and I was furious. How could she do this? How could she be so ruthless? I started to realize that her entire attitude had shifted. She was bitchy, dismissive, and arrogant, acting like she was untouchable. She tell me I had no rights to anything because she was the one who worked for it, even though I'd contributed just as much, if not more. She'd twist the facts, lie outright, and try to make me feel guilty for wanting what's legally mine. But I wasn't going to let her cheat me out of my life savings or our house. The emotional toll was intense. Some days I felt numb. Other days I was so angry I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my head, her lies, her cheating, the way she manipulated the system. It was a roller coaster, but I kept reminding myself that I had to stay strong. I had to win this fight, not just for the money or the property, but for my dignity. I refused to be the victim anymore. As the weeks went by, I started to see a light at the end of the tunnel. The legal process was slow, but steady. The court was beginning to see through her lies. I also started to think about what life might look like after all this. Was I going to stay and try to rebuild what we had? Or was it time to move on completely? Part of me still hoped for reconciliation, but deep down, I knew trust was broken beyond repair. She'd betrayed me in every way possible. I made a promise to myself that no matter how this ended, I'd come out of it stronger. I'd learn to trust again, but more cautiously this time. I'd rebuild my savings, my confidence, and my life. I also started to plan my next steps, whether that meant fighting for the house, getting a new place, or just focusing on myself. I knew I could fix what she'd broken, but I could control my future. That's what I was determined to do. Looking back, I realize how much I've learned about betrayal and resilience. I learned that people can surprise you in the worst ways, and that sometimes you have to fight to get your life back. I also learned that money isn't just about material things. It's about trust, security, and the future you build. And if someone you love turns out to be a liar and a thief, you have to stand up and take it back. I'm not there yet, but I'm definitely on my way. If you want me to keep going, just ask. The legal battle dragged on longer than I expected, but I was determined to see it through. Each court date was a roller coaster of emotions: hope, frustration, anger. Emily's constant attempts to twist the narrative and manipulate the system only fueled my resolve. I spent hours with my lawyer, going over every detail, making sure I had all my ducks in a row. The forensic audit confirmed what I already suspected. She'd been lying, stealing, and planning her escape for months. The property she'd been secretly buying was worth millions. Now, and I knew I had to act fast if I wanted to reclaim anything. One of the most shocking moments came when I learned she'd been using fake companies and shell accounts to hide her assets. She'd set up multiple LLCs, registered properties under different names, all to keep me in the dark. It made me realize just how far she was willing to go to cheat me out of everything. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. I kept thinking about all the years I'd worked hard, saving every penny, only to be betrayed like this. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about justice, about not letting her get away with it. Meanwhile, Emily was still trying to play the victim. She'd send me passive-aggressive texts, accusing me of trying to ruin her and saying I was jealous of her success. She claimed she was just trying to better herself, that the affair was just sex, and that I was overreacting. I couldn't believe her audacity. She was lying so blatantly, it was almost laughable if it weren't so infuriating. I knew she was desperate to keep her secrets hidden. But I wasn't going to let her. The court ordered a temporary injunction on her assets, freezing her bank accounts and any properties she'd bought. That was a huge win for me. It meant she couldn't sell or transfer anything else without my knowledge. I felt a little more secure, knowing I had some control. But I also knew this was just the beginning. She'd been planning her escape for months, and I had to stay alert. One of the most unbelievable revelations came when I finally got access to her emails and messages. She'd been secretly negotiating with real estate agents, buying up properties in my name, sometimes using fake IDs, sometimes just forging documents. She'd even set up accounts in her sister's name to hide the transactions. It was like she was building a new life behind my back, one I didn't even know about. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs. How could I have been so blind? That realization hit me hard. It was like a punch to the stomach. All those years I thought we were building something real. All those nights I stayed up worrying about bills, working late, thinking about our future. I was just a pawn in her game. She was out there scheming and stealing, and I was none the wiser. I felt a mixture of heartbreak and rage. How could she do this to me? How could she be so cold? As I sat in my lawyer's office going over the latest findings, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I was done being the naive husband. I was done trusting her. From now on, I'd be cautious, smarter. I'd rebuild my life piece by piece. I realized I couldn't undo what she'd done, but I could make sure she paid for it, legally, financially, and emotionally. I started making plans to appeal the court's decisions, to get full ownership of the house, and to recover what she'd stolen. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was prepared for the fight. I also began to think about my future without her. Did I want to stay married and try to save what was left? Or was it better to cut ties completely? Honestly, I was leaning toward the latter. Trust had been shattered beyond repair, and I didn't see how we could rebuild it after all she'd done. One thing I did realize was that I'd become stronger through this ordeal. I'd faced betrayal, financial theft, and emotional manipulation, and I was still standing. I knew I'd come out of this smarter, more cautious, and more aware of the kind of person I'd allowed into my life. I also learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply taking control, fighting for what's right, and refusing to let someone like her ruin you. So I decided to go all in. I was going to fight for my rights, expose her lies, and reclaim what's mine. I knew the road ahead would be tough, but I was ready. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. I'd rebuild my life, and I'd do it on my own terms. She might have tried to destroy me, but I wasn't going to let her win. Not after everything. If you want me to finish this up with the final part, just ask. The final stretch of this nightmare has been the hardest, but also the most revealing. After months of fighting in court, gathering evidence, and watching her try to spin her web of lies, I finally got the closure I needed. The judge ruled in my favor, awarding me full ownership of the house and freezing all her assets. It was a victory, but it came with a bitter taste. I had lost years of trust, years of what I thought was a genuine relationship, and a significant chunk of my savings to her schemes. Looking back, I realize how much I underestimated her. Emily was never the woman I thought I knew. She was manipulative, calculating, and utterly ruthless when it came to her own interests. All those little lies, the secret affairs, the money transfers, she'd been planning her escape for months, maybe even years. I was just too blind to see it until it was staring me in the face. That's the harsh truth I've come to accept. Now I'm finally starting to rebuild. I moved out of the house, cut all contact with her, and focused on my own healing. I've learned to trust myself again, to recognize the red flags early, and to be cautious with who I let into my life. The pain of betrayal still lingers, but it's slowly fading into a lesson, one I won't forget. I've also realized that revenge isn't about getting even, it's about reclaiming your life and dignity after someone tries to destroy it. The financial fallout has been tough, but I managed to recover most of what was stolen through court settlements, selling some of her properties and reclaiming assets she tried to hide. It wasn't easy, and it drained me emotionally, but I feel stronger for having fought through it. I've come out the other side more resilient and aware of how fragile trust can be, and how vital it is to protect what's yours. As I move forward, I do so with a sense of liberation. I don't harbor hatred for her anymore, just a deep understanding of what betrayal looks like firsthand. I learned that sometimes people are capable of the worst, and it's up to you to stand up, fight back, and take control of your life. I've also learned that no matter how broken you feel, there's always a way to rebuild, to find new happiness, and to trust again, carefully this time. This experience has changed me forever, but I refuse to let it define me. I'll always carry the scars of betrayal, but I'll also carry the strength of someone who refused to be defeated. 2. Anyone going through something similar, trust your instincts, document everything, and don't be afraid to fight for what's right. You deserve honesty, respect, and a life free of lies. It's not easy, but it's worth it. I'm finally at peace now, and honestly, that's the best revenge of all.